I talk about knife tips and how easily they break or don't. First of all, why would a knife have a tip on it that's fine, that's easily broken if you pry with it? Good question. This one right here is a full height grind. It has a very fine tip on it. The reason for this knife is I wanted it to be a really good slicer, and I want it to have enough cut from the saw back to form a kerf for the rest of the blade to go through. So there's various reasons for someone wanting a fine tip. Sometimes they don't want a fine tip and they get it anyway. If they request, say, a hunting knife or a knife like this, one that they want to have a really super fine cutter or a carver. The taller the grind, the better it's going to cut. So if a person requests a hunting knife, they use it a few years and sell it, or they don't like it and sell it, then they don't sell the paperwork with it. It's very important that the paperwork goes with it if you buy a Turley knife on the secondary market. The reason is that paperwork has listed on it what the knife is made to do. And I know this is surprising to some people, but not all knives are made to do everything. Not even mine. This knife, in contrast, has a very tough tip. This knife is made for stabbing into wood and prying. This knife has a varied grind, which is, on some profiles, susceptible to broken tips. Now this knife is a little bit thicker than this knife. Probably looking at the pictures and thinking it's a lot thicker. Well, it's deceiving to the eye. This is 3/16, and this is 5/32. So it's literally a 30-second thicker, this knife. So it's not much. So thickness doesn't always factor into it greatly. What usually factors into it is the grind itself, varied, which is full height at the end, or a true full height grind. Combine that with a profile that has a very pointy tip. Then you're going to get a weak tip. This one has a much more bull-nosed or blunt tip. That's why it's tougher, combined with a little bit of the thickness. If a knife doesn't perform as it is intended to, then it's my failure. If a knife, however, is used how it is not intended to be used, then it is not my failure. That's just as true as I can say it. Now that may ruffle some feathers, and that's fine. It's just logical truth. I admit it when it's my fault, and the user should admit it when it's their fault. If a person buys a knife on the secondary market and they say, hey, it says Turley on it, say they buy this knife, and I don't sell it with the paperwork, and this paperwork happens to say light use woodsman's knife. And if you read the catalog description on the warranty, a light use woodsman's knife is warranted for batoning and pretty much everything except prying, especially prying with the tip. But the person buys it without the paperwork. They get it, they take it out, and they're like, man, this is a Turley knife, it can take anything. And they stab it into some hedge and they twist. You know, they put lateral pressure on or side pressure and snap. And then they call me up afterwards and they say, man, I don't know what the deal is, this knife just broke. I can tell you, I usually know what the deal is because I've broken tips before. I've broken about everything there is to break on knives, my knives and other knives included. And I understand it. Whenever I first got into bushcraft, I had a Marbles Woodcraft, and if you know anything about that pattern, it's very blunt-nosed. But they're all full height grinds. Every single Marbles knife that you get pretty much is full height grind because they were made to hunt with. They're made as cutting tools primarily. They're not a utilitarian sort of a tool. So I went out, slammed it in some wood. It wasn't even very hard wood. I think it was sycamore. Twisted it, popped. Broke probably a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch off the tip. Well, I didn't call up Marbles and ask them to replace it. because I knew I was abusing it. I didn't know that much about knives, but I could tell by looking at the tip that it probably shouldn't be doing what I'm trying to make it do. So what I'm getting at is, if you want a knife that you can treat hard on the tip, then get one. So the bottom line is, if you want a knife that will do everything and is warranted for everything, then get a knife pattern that is and thickness and grind that is tough at the tip, will cut decently, which is probably going to lead you to like a half height grind or a blunt nosed profile like this one with a varied grind, and a bolted on micarta handle. If you do that, you'll have no worries, and you won't ever have to email me saying, I broke the tip on my knife, or the handle, or the blade, or whatever. You'll be good to go golden. If, on the other hand, you want a hunting knife, I can do that too. But just don't take it out, pound it into an oak stump, and twist. Now, having said all of that, there is a way to do it without breaking a tip on a fine tipped knife. For example, I have a video using I think it's a Case, hollow handled. It's a vintage knife. You can check it out on my channel. That knife is not made at all to do what I was doing with it. Stabbing into wood and twisting. But the thing is, you have to know how to do it. It's not so much the technique, it's the wood. I wasn't using red elm, for instance, which is like splitting steel cable. I wasn't going through knots. I was using very easy to split wood, and that's part of it. You have to be knowledgeable about your knife and about the wood you're using. That's part of being a woodsman, in my opinion. So, I don't want you to think that it's never ever able to do it, because you can. People have done it for a long, long time. I've had this knife and been using it hard for, I don't know, a year and a half, and I'm talking really hard, and the tip is bent. And I really thought the first day I'd use it that tip would be broken. And then eventually, like I say, it probably will break, because I'll get careless and do what I shouldn't do. And when that happens, I'll do the repair video for you. But that's all I wanted to say. Just know what you're buying. That's why the certificates are there. Anyway, thanks for watching, and catch you later.